Okay, welcome. This is the Emerson Elementary School Community Council meeting, December 9th, 5:30 p.m. If you are just joining us, the link to the agenda is in the chat. I'm going to put it up here in just a moment, and we can get started. Sorry, welcome everyone. There we go. Can you see the agenda? So this time we have gone through and done rounds of introductions. If it's okay with you today, I'm just going to ask that you've got your name in your box so people can see you, and we'll skip introductions today because I know there are a lot of people who are interested in the report out and potential for return to school. So we want to kind of be observant of our time. Meeting minutes were sent out with the agenda last week. I need a motion to approve those, please.
I'll move to approve the minutes as distributed.
Thank you, Jack. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Who was that? I'm sorry, was that Trisha? Thank you, Trisha seconds. Any opposed or any items that need to be discussed? Thank you, the minutes are approved. April, will you give us a quick report? I know you've been busy.
Sure, just a few things. Our food drive was a huge success. You've probably seen that in the eaglet and different postings, but amazing contributions from our community. We had over 12,000 meals that were funded, and plus several carts of food that Mr. Craner took to the food bank. So generous contributions that helped people who are experiencing food issues. And so that is for our community and all of the Salt Lake Valley. So we were really amazed at that. So thank you so much. Food insecurity is an issue, and we made a positive contribution there. We are doing the Snowball holiday support activity remotely this year, and I think it's gone smoothly, but I'm not shopping. I just have to approve the Amazon orders. But Linda does the order, and then I approve it, and then the gifts actually go to the student's home. And so we've had a huge number of contributions there. I know it's over $4,000 that we are using to fund kids' gifts, and there are lots of kids in need this year. So thank you, and we will get all that finished, this week and probably into next. But that's been awesome also. And then other than that, it's just been this process of potential, the re-entry to school that we've been working on, and so our teachers, we've been discussing it in our PLCs a little bit, and then as we've been getting information, doing some planning. So our SIC met on Monday for the first round, and I have some information to share about that when we get to it. But that's pretty much been it.
Thanks, April. I'm sure we'll have questions for you later, so we'll just keep going. Do we have someone who participated in the SIC meeting that would like to report? Mary Lou or Jana or April? Or Tisha, sorry, there you are.
I thought Jana was doing it. Is that not true, Jana?
I never got that message. But
Oh. We're at the same meeting.
I know. I don't know. The SIC met on Monday, and our conversation was basically about the reentry process. So, we feel teachers have a bunch of questions, and then we know, going to the community at large. So I think I don't really have much to report other than what April's going to report. Is that correct, April?
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time discussing that as well. So.
Great. So we'll get there. Thank you. Anything from the PTA?
I was there. They talked about doing STEM night in a box, and so putting together kits for families to kind of register for, and then do some kind of a STEM activity at home. That was discussed, and then they formally decided not to do the yearbook this year. That had been talked about a lot, but finally just pulled the Band-Aid and said we're not going to do that. They gave some update on fundraising and talked about kind of strategy about, is it the Move and Groove, April? Like, and kind of when to market that because of like holiday and asking for giving and families, you know, being obviously affected by pandemic and stuff, and how much we needed to do in fundraising, and being very transparent about where that funding was going, because, you know, we're not paying for field trips this year. We're not paying for as many things as the PTA typically would pay for. So I just think there was a lot of kind of discussion around that and being mindful about that. That's kind of what I remember.
Thank you. Anybody else who was there, April? Anything?
They were looking at officers for next year and what that process might look like, because they're going to have some open seats and how they would address that also. It was on the agenda. It was a discussion. And they're always looking for volunteers to kind of help with some of the projects and stuff they're working on.
Great. And they put those announcements out in the eaglet, and they also are on social media and on the email. So sorry, my phone keeps dinging. If we're interested, we can find it there. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing because you all have seen it now. I noticed that, sorry, we've got a couple people in the waiting room. It looks like our new district rep has joined us. And I do, before we get into our the remainder of our agenda, I just want to quickly acknowledge the service that Samuel Hanson has provided to the board in our area. And you get a silent round of applause, Samuel. And
Thank you.
And we'd like to welcome Mo as well. But Samuel, if you have any comments or anything you'd like to share with this group, we're happy to hear them.
Well, it's been a privilege and a joy to work with all of you, and with April and everyone that works at Emerson. And I'm just thrilled that Mohammed is willing to take on this job at the hardest possible moment. But I know he's up to the task and will do a great job. So thank you all for all the work that you put into Emerson and to our district.
Sam, thank you for that kind introduction. Sam, you've done an amazing job, period. I am very amazed of the quality of respect that everyone that I have talked to within our district has for you. And you know, and your belated mother as well. I feel very humbled, and I got a lot to learn. And you know, seeing 70% of the community supporting me to be in the school board, it is joyful, but at the same time, it is, yeah, it's just like that 70% of the population feels, you know, that I can bring some difference. And I can't wait to sit down and listen and learn. And then, you know, take those issues, discuss them, you know, pull out the information that are needed with the board and put them to action. You know, I am a person that I just do not like to just have something, talk about it, establish a piece of paper, and then we move on. No, we would like to see some concrete, results. I mean, it's not going to be all 100% every time. But one thing I know is like diplomacy works. Hand in, an olive branch works. And there's going to be times it's going to be, not good. I hope no one taps into my Moroccan side. Let me keep my diplomacy side, but I am anxiously waiting to work with everyone. Thank you for everything you're doing. I live right here near Emerson, and it amazes me how that vehicle keeps running smooth with all the challenges we face. So thank you, be patient, and let's work together, get this taken care of.
Thank you. Do you prefer to be called Mo or Mohammed? I've seen.
That's a very good question. Let's keep it at Mohammed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love that name to be out there. It's a whole new world.
Excellent. Well, welcome. We're very pleased to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, so briefly, we after our last meeting, we had a small task group put some time and thought into the school social media. We sent some ideas and some information to April for review. And I know that had gone to the district's communications office to see if there were opportunities for parents or the SCC to assist in that. And I don't know, April, if we've had any feedback. No, I'm sure they're very busy. So we will go ahead and wait on that one, but we'll double back. So with that, sorry, go ahead.
Just to have a community member post on the Facebook. I know we PTA has kind of investigated that as well, and under Dr. Cunningham's leadership, and that there was a shift in that. And since that time, we've not had a parent or anything working on that. So I will see what Yandri says now. It may have shifted a little bit, but if there are things packaged that to be posted, I can certainly do that. I'll try to keep up as best I can. Sometimes Leah sends me reminders. So
the last thing we want to do is add to your workload. If there's a way that we can supplement the social media, especially just because everyone is digital now, if there's ways that we can supplement it without adding to your workload, that's what we'd like to do. So we'll just keep in touch on that. But yeah, I think Trisha, Jared, and I can loop back and maybe just start developing some content to send your way. And teachers as well, if there's content that you think is appropriate or that we can make an ask of the rest of the teachers and staff about, we'd like to do that as well. We'd love to highlight things that are happening in classrooms, the good work that's happening, because we really know it is. So that'd be great. Okay, on to the actual meat of the agenda for today. The school district met on the 1st. A teacher survey went out, a parent survey went out. April, will you fill us in?
Yeah, and maybe the teachers can chime in on the SLEA survey. I know there was a survey that was sent out through the Teachers Association, and then my understanding is that the district also has just recently sent one out that's a little different than the other. So I don't know if one of the teachers would like to kind of talk about that. We have not seen that information, at least from SLEA. I assume that it will be shared with buildings, and I don't know exactly what the district was looking for, but maybe one of the teachers can respond to that.
You just want to know. So the teachers union sent out survey about 2 weeks ago. And it was mostly just asking how people felt as far as safety and things in returning. So I think that was, you know, that went to the union for whatever, you know, the purposes they're trying to meet the needs of the teachers and advocate for the teachers. And then last week there was like a 3 or 4 question survey that came out from the district. It's just asked, you know, again, it was just, are you willing to come back? What are you willing to do as far as online or in-person instruction, or a combination of both? My understanding from that, correct me if I'm wrong, other teachers, but they said it was anonymous, that they were just gathering data and it wasn't linked specifically to a teacher. That's what I know.
Thank you. And right before this meeting, I was in a district office meeting too about potential scheduling and stuff like that. And they mentioned too that a survey had gone out to classified employees as well. So they're trying to get some input from them also. So they're hitting those other groups that are impacted by, you know, school opening and stuff like that. So I think that's great that they're gathering some input about that. I haven't seen the results, or I don't know how exactly the district is using it. I think the board wanted that information shared as well, but that's what I know is happening there.
Yeah, and so, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I was just going to say, we got the first survey from SLEA in near the end of October, but we haven't gotten the new one yet. So I think they must still be working on putting it together.
Yeah, and I know there are some families and parents who have not received the survey. And so I was informed today that there's going to be another set of emails that are they're going to be going out this evening with the hope that the families that did not receive them will be able to receive them, because we are one of those that did not receive the survey. So yeah, Joe, it looks like there has been some technical glitches and how the system reads certain emails and stuff like that, but they are working on it.
My understanding about that, it was sort of delayed in getting sent out in the first place. It didn't go out until Monday, like at 10:30 in the evening. And it appears it came from me, but it really came from the assessment department at the district, which is fine.
Yes.
There were some issues with people getting those and things going into the spam, like if they have more than one child, if they have a Gmail or a Yahoo account, it gets bumped into spam and stuff like that. And then today was this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I had responded to some emails parents had sent, and then I kept some that wanted me to reset their password. We finally got what we needed so we could send out an email with a link. And so Bree sent those out this afternoon. So we tried to correct as many as we knew about, but that's great if the district's sending another round. So we're just trying to make sure that everybody has access. And
Yes.
then I had some parents who emailed me and yesterday with their, like, I don't know if my response went through. So I printed their emails and responded back, and I've also got paper copies so I can check their responses based on what they send in the email and make sure that they're consistent. So we're trying to work through that as best we can so we can gather information. And last time I looked, we had 280 people who had responded. So about half of our school community. So we're getting results back. And I know some groups were waiting for responses, you know, from me so they could make a decision. So things have just been a little slower than we would like, but we're getting there.
Thank you.
Want me to just keep on going?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things, and I've communicated this in my letter to you and all that, that I sent out, you know, Emerson is unique in that we have 3 programs in our school. 2 are district programs, so our ELP magnet, that's dual immersion, and also our special ed hub, and then we have our general ed or neighborhood kids as well. So when we start looking through all this stuff, I mean, we get a general survey that's sent out, but it's very different in terms of options that are available for some programs versus others. If you only have 1 teacher in a grade level and so on. So we will be looking at each, when we get the data back, we'll look at those by program. And in my meeting this afternoon too, you know, the district understands how complicated it is for Emerson, and that we will have more options in some areas and few options in others. I'm not sure how the remote option will work. I thought I kind of knew, but then I was confused this afternoon. I know teaching and learning, or the district people, have an idea about that. Right now, it's just about gathering data to see how many students in each school, and then we're in about, you know, a bunch of different hubs. So we're like in the dual immersion hub, the special ed hub, the regular schools. So we're talking about sharing FTE to cover the kids who need to be in remote. And my understanding was that as a school, we kind of were doing that, but it sounds more like it's different, but I don't have information about that yet. So that will be coming. So the first step is just to gather data. When we were in our SIC meeting, we were just throwing around some ideas based on some concerns people had, and how we could put together a plan that sort of addresses those concerns. Of course, you know, student safety is a big one. And one of the things that kept coming up was that concern about lunch. How do we deal with students in our small cafeteria with no masks on and eating lunch and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Teacher planning time, how we're going to make sure teachers get the planning time that they need. And this is before we met, just right before this meeting, but it's interesting how this all kind of shook out. But we'd heard mixed reviews about the asynchronous day, like whether that was the best use of time, if kids should get more synchronous instruction, and how that might look in a potential schedule, how teachers could get their duty-free lunch. When we talked to the foods and nutrition people, they're like, well, kids can eat in classrooms and this and that, but there's some safety concerns about that. And there's the concern about teachers getting their duty-free lunch that's, you know, guaranteed by their teacher contract. We wanted to have a consistent schedule, and we are also concerned about our rotation or our specials, however they're, you know, you think of them, our music, art, all those, and those teachers and their potential exposure to a number of kids, and how we could do that safely also. What we were considering was more of a reduced day schedule, where kids would have a block in the morning from, like, you know, 8 to 12, for example, and then go home, and after lunch have 60 to 90 minutes of remote instruction from home. So that would take away the lunch dilemma. Kids could take their grab and go stuff and get on the bus and do all that. And then there's the whole transportation piece too, how that fits in with all of this. But we were just kind of brainstorming and working from a potential plan or idea. And so that this would happen every day, 8 to 12, Monday through Friday. Then on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, there would be this afternoon instruction. And then the Wednesday afternoon would be like it is on a Friday usually. It's teacher planning time. So they have that block of planning time on Wednesday. So it's kind of like we moved the Friday to the Wednesday, because I think the district has wanted to keep that asynchronous day because our secondary kids are using that. And so that was just an idea. And it also created then some other questions or issues. For example, aftercare. If kids were in the after-school program at Emerson, would they be able to do it? And we don't know the answer to that. I think our daycares in the area that are already serving our kids would probably be flexible because they are having the kids there all day. So they would just come and pick up our pickups and take kids to their sites. We wondered about food services, how long it would take the ELP buses to get kids home. And then we also want our, there's some consistency, but maybe our students with disabilities need maybe a little bit different schedule because we know the remote part is really hard for them. So maybe they'd go home later in the afternoon on the bus. So we were just brainstorming options for that. In the meeting I attended before this, they had kind of talked through two different schedules. One is that kind of a shortened day schedule, which they love, but it's, a short, like 4.5 hour schedule, sort of similar to this. So maybe it's 4.25, and then the 6.5 hour schedule. And they're totally in draft. I mean, we don't have access to them. Those are just ideas too that they're exploring, that schools could kind of at least have a basic structure that they could start thinking about what that schedule might look like in their building, if that makes sense. And I know teachers, there's a lot of questions about procedures and things that, we use there's a COVID-19 school manual that has procedures outlined for schools in terms of cleaning, how the restrooms are, set up, how you do, all of those things that we will put together based on that. But teachers have some questions too about like air circulation in our building. Things like there's not windows at Emerson. Unless you're on the east wing, you don't have windows in the building. All of those kinds of things came up. We have about a page of questions about that. So right now they're really general ideas. And then we're figuring out how we can kind of overlay that with what the district's proposing and make it work for our school. And I don't know if a shortened day schedule would be something people would be open to, or if folks are committed to that full day of instruction. I know our remote learners, if we have a long day, they're already kind of zoomed out, you know what I mean? That's a long day for little kids to be on a computer. So I don't know what that will look like. They're trying to make it equitable in terms of whether you're on remote or you're in person, but the shortened day was kind of a balance of the two, we felt like. And we didn't know if it was even an option. So. And
I would just add that, having talked to folks that are working on this at the district office, my sense is that this is a schedule that would really help our schools on the west side that are really terribly, everywhere now is really terribly afflicted with COVID in Salt Lake, but that are, struggling to keep their schools staffed even for remote learning. If there were enough schools that signed on to this schedule that it was workable with the transportation department, I think it would be a good schedule for this school, but also maybe a good schedule for the whole district to have at least at a large number of our schools. So that just to have that in the back of your mind as you think about it.
Thanks, and it kind of gets to the uniqueness of our building too. And we have kids from all over the district being bused here for ELP magnet, for example. And just, we don't just have kids who just live in our community like some schools. We have kids from all over the place. And so just trying to find a match there. And what we'd ask the teachers to do in SIC is just kind of, start punching holes in this plan. Tell us what doesn't work. What are your worries? And that's kind of what we're asking from you too, is input, so that we can consider the things that you're worried about, and we can think through whether this is even a possibility, and just knowing that there's kind of two options out there. But Does anybody have any ideas or input or questions, things like I can write down? Our SIC is meeting again on Monday. So we'll have the information gathered here to discuss on Monday when we meet again.
April, can I hop in? We
Mhm.
talked about the safety for April and Bree as well, because they're going to be around so many students, and we talked about how can we limit their access to students, because you know that can put them at high risk. We talked about our secretary not having as much access, and then we also talked about making sure parents understand the importance of not coming into the building if that's at all possible, because you know we just need to keep people healthy and well, and that's not going to happen if we just let whoever, you know, people walk in whenever they want to come in. It's made me even think about my pickup, because I've been having my parents come to the classroom and pick up, and I'm going to definitely change that, because that's probably not safe in our building. So
Yeah, our routines will definitely be different. And I know we're a community school where we have lots of parents in our building in the morning and in the afternoon, you know, dropping their kids off and picking them up, and, you know, parents chat and visit with each other and all that. And there's going to be some things that are going to be different, like how we do that. We'll probably have to go outside and pick up kids and bring them in the building. You know, adults won't be allowed in. Stuff like that, just to get us through these last months of school safely, and then we can look at kind of having things back to normal. But during this time, it's definitely going to be a shift in a lot of things that we've been used to.
Has there been any discussion relating to kind of entry of all of the kids into the classrooms at the same time? I know the hallways can get fairly crowded under normal conditions, right? So, you know, has there been talk of like a staggered entry and then staggered release to kind of avoid that hall room crowding?
We haven't talked about it in detail, but it did come up in the SIC meeting about what that might look like. What we're thinking would be some meeting areas outside where classrooms would meet, and then the teacher would come out and escort the kids in, and it would be staggered. We're looking at not using lockers, for example, so that time in the hallway would be reduced. So we're doing that. Kids coming in off the bus they get here at 7:45 under this plan. So those kids would come through the cafeteria. So there'd be a number, you know, some kids that would do that, but most of them would be outside and we'd escort them in. So through different entries into the building. Kindergarten could come through their entry out by the kindergarten playground, and then we'd have, you know, the 2 doors on the east side as possibilities, and there'd be a way of, we'd have a process for escorting the kids in.
April, I have one question. In regards to, is there fire drills? Is that something that's still going to be going on during this, you know, especially with social distancing and so?
We haven't gotten direction about that specifically yet. We've been doing our drills remotely, like just teachers discussing when we're in school, this is what we do, or practice, this is what it means if there's a lockout drill. Things like that that are different. So I don't know what they will be for when we are in live.
Right.
So we'll wait to hear from Paul or Ricardo about that.
Okay.
That's definitely a concern. Yeah. I didn't see your chat there, Leah, with the congestion outside.
I was just thinking about, I mean,
Yeah.
the current plan brings in the lowest grades for a week, and then we add grades each week. And so by the 3rd week or 4th week, we'd be full. But if you're trying to group children outside or drop them off in some sort of slow release, you'd have lots of parents sitting in cars idling, or just sitting in the street, or something. So traffic is less of a concern, but it's probably something to consider also. I had a couple of folks emailed me asking for the link, and there were a couple of questions that they had emailed over. One of them was, and I don't remember your name, but if you're there, pipe up after I ask this. One of them was about improvements that might have been made to Emerson's HVAC system, and whether improvements were made and what they were.
I don't know if they've done improvements to the system, but I know they've looked at the filtering system, and they are using, they're called MERV 13 air filters. And they have a schedule for changing those. Those would be in the portables and throughout the building. And so that's what's been recommended and is in place here. Our school is a little different because we don't have windows and things. So it's, I don't know that they came in and did anything to the system, but it's the filtering system that they looked at and made adjustments to. And I think they started that in the spring, or not too long after that, when we were on our dismissal. So that's what the district has chosen to go with. And I don't know what that means exactly, but it's the one, you know, those filters are being used in all the buildings, is my understanding.
Yeah, Paul mentioned that to us in a meeting, and he said that that's the highest quality filter you can get for the existing HVAC systems without completely redoing them. So for a while they were doing 8s, and then they went up to 13s. I don't know what the difference is, but I think 13 is better than 8.
Thank you.
I'm curious if you've talked to any other schools and other districts, just to kind of learn what has worked well for them or what hasn't worked well. And
yeah, there have been administrators that have gone out and visited some school sites to see how they were handling things, and looking at their procedures and what they're doing. I have not attended one, but Bree went on one, and then the other administrators shared in our admin meeting and shared ideas, and we all took notes about that. We can set one up with Ben. It's a person that Mary Lou knows, to kind of look at his school. And but we've got quite a bit of information. I imagine we might do another visit soon, but we gathered info from schools. And they kind of have different takes on things, but it's kind of interesting. But there's a lot of things that are in common, and a lot of them are kind of outlined in that COVID-19 school manual that the state has put out for schools. So,
April, one of the things that Ben Peters is a principal at Canyon Rim in Granite District, and the thing he said that Granite District was doing, and this might be important for the school board to think about, that they have the pods of schools that are junior high and high school, and they have the same plan, so that there's no inconsistencies. If you're on the east side, or, you know, the east, whatever we have the Highland, the east, west, whatever we have, I don't know what we call it anymore, our little pods.
Networks.
But, yeah, with the networks. He just said that was really important. And then the other thing he said is the kids just don't get to play with anybody that's not in their class. That's how they set it up at recess time, and they don't get to mingle. They just get to mingle with the kids that are in their room. And he said that's probably the hardest thing for kids to handle, and that they're still going to have meltdowns at the end of the day, because it's still pandemic education. So it doesn't solve anything, but he said it, you know, that's the hard thing, because the kids are not able to really play with each other, because you can't let them really play with each other. So that was the one thing that he just said, they have to just stay with their group of kids. So those were the two things that I thought that making sure that they do it consistently from junior high to high school was of value, and that's something we should take note on.
I see a question in the chat from Liz about art and music. So the departments of the district are going to make recommendations, but what we heard today was that those teachers, for example, library, art, music, would do something like if they are going to work synchronously with a group, it would be a grade level for that week, and then all the other grade levels would get their asynchronous stuff. And I don't know if that means live in a classroom with them or via, just streaming from their location. But there'll be a schedule set up like that. I don't know that music this year is going to be held like a regular music class. It's one of the most risky activities kids can do. So they'll get that information out to us. My understanding is I think everything will be via Zoom for that instruction. Same thing for librarians. Somehow they will work with a grade level a week, and then we'll have to plan our schedule like that. But they're trying to reduce their exposure, and same thing for art. So maybe they're in the classrooms, or if they're live working with the kids in the room. So there'll be some specifics, but it's going to look very, very different for sure on that. Does that help, Liz? Does that get to it?
Jared, did you have a comment? I thought you were piping up earlier. Did he freeze? No? All right, sorry about that.
Do any of you have strong feelings about a shortened day? Is it too big of a hardship for families, do you think? Or just, kind of what are your thoughts about that?
Are you asking teachers or anybody?
Anybody.
I think that if the trade-off is a shortened day so that they can have reduced exposure during cafeteria time, I think that's a concession that I as a parent would be willing to make.
Thank you.
I would agree. I think that if it especially reduces some of the kind of complexities associated with different transitions by having a shortened day, that's not just from an exposure standpoint, but from just a planning standpoint, there's enough to plan as is. Reducing the complexity of that, I think, makes a lot of sense.
This is Joey. I would agree with both of those statements, and it sounds like it would work better for the teachers who, and like school professionals who I'm really worried about in all of this, just managing all of it and the expectations that they've had already this year. So that's a pretty compelling reason for me as well.
Thanks.
It would work for us because we're home working. I mean, I realize that's a place of privilege, but I'm stuck in my basement, so I'm happy to walk over and pick them up because I can work in my basement.
I agree with all those statements. I do think it's going to be tricky for some families, but I think anything we do is going to be tricky for some families. If we just take Wednesdays off or Fridays off, that working mom is going to have a really hard time, or dad, on Wednesdays or Fridays figuring it out. If it's a shortened day, I think that there's probably not a blanket solution that will work for everyone. So, weighing in the cautious or the arena that can keep people the most safe is, I think, probably the best solution.
Thanks for that feedback. It definitely, when we first looked at this, it was that safety aspect of it too, and the balance between that. But definitely in terms of safety, it does eliminate a lot of pieces of the puzzle in terms of exposures, for staff and kids, and being in a cafeteria with their masks off, and it's crazy.
I guess one of the things that I do wonder about are the families that have childcare. If, like you said, April, I think the centers that already service Emerson can probably figure out some flexibility and have been planning that, assuming some change would be coming. But I wonder about families who may not already be enrolled in childcare programs, but would do so when the students return, right? Like some people are working from home because their children are at home and would be required to go back if the children return to school. Trying to find a place in childcare is difficult anyway, and I expect that would be even more difficult with the enrollment limitations and other things. So that might be a, if there's opportunity for further question, that might be something to consider as well.
Right.
Hi, April, it's Elizabeth.
Yep.
I just wanted to speak in because Carol Bloswick, who is on the call, she's stuck in a respond to me privately instead of to everyone chat. So I just wanted to make sure that she had a voice. She gave me permission to read her chat.
Okay.
Carol was saying that a shortened day would be very difficult for her family. And then she said it works if you're home working, but if parents are working, it's hard. It's a hard transition. And at the point that they're there, I don't understand a shortened day. It said, will Emerson childcare kick in, was the last message from Carol. So a question of, for those that are working that can't get there at noon and transition their children to childcare, that's a concern.
Yeah, and we have to investigate that with the after school program. And I don't know if they have openings even. I know they've been doing it virtually or whatever. I don't know how many openings they have to accept kids and if they could even do it on a short day. So that was one of the things we thought of as well. So we'd have to check with them on that.
April, do you have many kids right now in remote that are at the libraries in the city's program?
I'm not sure about that. We have a lot of kids who are at Boys and Girls Club, St. John's, and then we have parents who've set up hubs or little pods of with their families and are working that way. But I haven't heard about the library option. Has anybody else heard of families using that one? No.
I was just curious because I know a couple of other schools that I go to have several that are using the main library and some of the other satellites. It's probably a good reminder for us that we need to make sure they know that we're talking about this half-day schedule as well.
Yeah.
I'll just read Trisha's adding.
RJ Primero, yeah.
Yeah, RJ Primero. Trisha also added that it might be worthwhile just reaching out to some of those centers and asking. And there are many in the St. John's group. What other questions do we have for April?
I have more of a comment maybe than a question. I happen to be, my older daughter goes to a private school. I happen to be on their COVID task force, which sounds more formal than what it really is. But they've been in person. And so I can give you some of our pitfalls and things we've figured out as we've gone through, because we're kindergarten through 8th grade. So one of the hard pieces was monitoring drinking fountains. So those had to be completely cut off because of just risk of exposure. Every school or every class does recess together and lunch together. They can only eat together. They can only do recess together. And I mean, up until this week, they were outside eating lunch, right? And they were spaced out. They knew everyone knows where their little pod is. That's what they call it, is a pod. Keeping in mind too, they have much smaller classes. So that makes a big difference. And then the classes go in and out of the same doors every single time. So whether you're coming in for school, leaving for recess, whatever it is, you know that that's your door and you're not allowed to go in or out another door. That has made a huge difference. Easier for contact tracing when we've needed to because of it. And then I would also mention that I think when you're thinking of how this is going to affect parents, and as a working mom and 2 working parents where my career is nonstop, so it is hard to stop, halfway through and I have a son special needs. So he gets dropped off at 12:30. So we're kind of in that kind of bubble, that picture of what you guys are looking to do. I think to have early communication is incredibly important, so it can be bubbled up to employers, and so that you can schedule things appropriately, and that you make it clear that this will be consistent. And if it's not going to be consistent, we know that this is about the time frame when we think that these things are going to change. So that I happen to work in HR, and that is how we're structuring things for all of my clients. How to do this nationwide so that parents can have these conversations with their managers, not feel like their careers are going to be in jeopardy. But the only way to do that is to ensure that the schools are telling us early, and that we know that maybe there's a time period where it'll stick, and then maybe it'll change, but then we'll have another time period where it'll stick and it won't shift. Because the more times we hop around, the more stressful it will be for everybody, especially the kids. I just think of my coop would lose it. The more change, the harder it is, right? So that's it. Yeah, lots. Sorry.
Those are great ideas. I know our water fountains have been shut off too, and we're going to have 2 water bottle filling stations in the building instead, and we'll have water bottles for kids and that. But yeah, there's some of those things have started in our building as well, but those others are great.
Those little things you just don't think of, like the water bottle thing. My daughter forgets her water bottle every day. So how to manage that too is also a thing. So
yeah, that's great input. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been attending the Clayton Middle School, Intermediate School, whatever it's called, SCC, because now I have a son in junior high. And they've been talking a lot about students who have opted out of Salt Lake District because they weren't happy with online, right? And so like their enrollment went down, a decent amount. And they've been talking about like how much that has impacted them and planning about like getting those families back. And I guess I'm just curious if that's been an issue at Emerson, or if that's something that you guys have talked about or seen significant exodus. And then the last thing is they suggested they want to put together like a parent group to talk about this for incoming 7th graders. So I don't know if anybody here has a 6th grader, but if you do and you're interested in being involved in that conversation for Clayton specifically, you can reach out to me and I would put you in with that. I think a lot of people here have like kindergartner students. So if you know of a 6th grade parent who wants to be involved in that conversation, I'd love to connect you.
In terms of enrollment, I can speak to what our numbers look like last year. Currently, we have 530 kids enrolled. Last year, I think we were up around 560 or 570. So we've lost probably 35 or 40 students. However, we were projected to have 603 this year. So if our projections were accurate, we're down 70 kids. So we don't know if all of those kids that we thought would come were going to in anyway, but our projections were higher than they had been. But our current enrollment is 530. And one of the things we're a little worried about is families who chose to go to a charter or something who live in our boundaries that will come back when we start in person, and our class size will bump way up. So we don't know about that. We haven't necessarily been contacted, but from families, but I know that is an option. And people said, well, when you're in person, we'll be back, kind of a thing. So we haven't necessarily planned for those kids to come back right now, but we'll see what happens.
Have you heard that, or has Linda heard that? Like parents coming in, withdrawing from school and saying, we're leaving because we want in person, but we'll be back?
Yes, that happened during registration, or right around the first of the school year. So
yeah, I think Clayton was down like 100 kids from the
Mm.
700-ish to the 600-ish, or 750 to 650, something like that. And they were talking about how that was pretty common in anecdotally. The registrar was saying that was what she heard a lot.
I recall an article this summer in the Tribune too, relating to increased enrollment at a number of the virtual charter schools. So I think Utah Virtual Academy and Utah Connections. I want to say it was like 1,000 students in one of them and 1,500 in the other. And I'd be curious to know if those students, I want to say that article was kind of mid-August, before Salt Lake District would have had a firm plan, or just around the time. And I'd be curious to know if those were students that were joining from Salt Lake District or primarily from other districts. It'd be kind of an interesting data point, because I think there's certainly been outflow from Salt Lake to other districts, but there may have been a lot of outflow from Salt Lake and other districts to, dedicated online charters as well.
Yeah, the whole state lost students for the first time in like 20 years. And of course there was a lot of jockeying around why we'd lost as many students as we lost, and unquestionably we lost many because we decided to do remote learning. But I think it's interesting because Emerson's been on an upward trend. The whole district's been on a downward trend for a few years. But the suburbs, Granite lost, I think, actually more students total, probably a smaller percentage of their population because their population is so large. But I think they and one of the other ones, I can't remember if it was Canyon or Jordan, actually lost more total students than we did. And some of them have gone to charters. Some of them, I think we still don't really know where they've gone. They may just be getting homeschooled, or I don't think we know yet from the state.
Yeah, I think if they were going to a private or completely withdrawn with a homeschool, they would be completely out of the system. But remember, charter schools are public schools, so
right.
If somebody goes to a charter, it's not a net loss in terms of the state numbers. So, anecdotally, I know parents that have gone to private schools too.
Right.
No, I mean, not a lot, but.
Samuel, I wondered a few board meetings ago, there was some talk about potentially the district requesting some sort of hold harmless related to funding due to the change in enrollment. Did that go anywhere? Is the district looking at any kind of request like that?
We're just quaking in our boots, honestly, to see what the legislature does to us, because they historically have punished us for our high property values, and arguably for being where all the Democrats live for years. And so we can ask, and I think we should all ask. When I say we, I mean all the districts, not just our district. But I wouldn't hold your breath for that. I think it's a good thing for everyone to talk to their legislators directly about, but I would who knows? Anything can happen with COVID, as we've learned, but I think I would be surprised if we don't get punished in some way for the dip we've had, and again, that will go for everyone to a certain extent across the state. So
yeah, what I was going to say is they wouldn't do anything specific to one district, but it's also calculated on like a 3-year rolling average. So, and it's more complex than a 1-to-1, like a kid in a seat. It's the average daily membership, which is not the same as attendance. And then they use, it's like the prior year, and then they do like an October 1 to an October 1 census count to calculate growth. And so it's not just like we're going to get a 1-to-1 reduction in funds based on this year anyway. But I totally agree that it should be a lot of voices coming to the legislature who are parents saying, do not hold any public school in, you know, punitive damage because of this crazy year and enrollment numbers. And, you know, their revenue figures are not substantially down. We are not in a world of hurt. There is not a huge deficit like in other states. And so I agree that it's super important for parents to contact legislators and let their voices be heard of how they feel about public school funding.
Diane also posted in the chat a link to the Utah State Board of Education a comment form regarding a federal addendum and waiver. So Diane, I don't know if you want to add anything there, but I'll just point out that it's there and everyone should take a look at it.
Yeah, I just saw it, and it's just a little comment box that you can add in, but maybe if we start with testing, we can get it up to funding too. So it was just a thought when you guys brought it up.
Thank you.
Right.
One,
And I think, and your school board member too, your state school board member,
right.
who for a lot of us is probably Carol Lear.
Mhm.
one question that I've heard, and I've heard from two parents, I'll try to distill them because they were in a similar theme. But they were in relation to the parent survey. And I guess initially it's less of a question and more of a comment. The comment was that it's difficult to make a firm decision regarding whether you're comfortable returning to in-person learning if you don't know what that will look like. And so that, I think, was a difficult question for a lot of parents. I mean, I know it was a challenging one for our family. And then I suppose in a related, and this is the question that follows the comment, and that is there or will there be an opportunity to reassess decisions based on what a plan may look like? And I realize plans are predicated based on the initial survey, so it's kind of a chicken and egg problem. But I seem to recall that in the last school board meeting, there was some discussions relating to kind of reassessing and allowing parents to change decisions depending on whether their student would have to change teachers or if they were uncomfortable with the opening plan as presented. But I don't know if there's any insights related to that.
I can tell you how I've responded to parents is just for them to reach out and we'll see what we can work out. I know that there's a lot of unknowns, and we did voice that in our administration meeting too. Like, we're asking parents to vote on something they don't know about. I think we just wanted to get a feel for numbers and what that might look like. But if something isn't working, I've asked people to just kind of reach out and see what we can come up with, and we can get kids in a good spot. But I don't know how many will choose to do that, but I like that better than going by a trimester date or whatever. I think that's, if something's not working, why wait? Let's just take care of it. So we'll see. There may be some shifts.
You all are so lucky to have April as your principal, because I think the way that I mean, all the time, but especially right now, because I think the way that we made this decision as a board put a ton of pressure on principals and SICs to come up with a lot of the details and to message it as it shifts and changes. So sorry about that. I wish that it would have been a little bit cleaner of a communication strategy from us, but we're making stuff up on the fly like everybody.
Yeah. I think the biggest frustration for me was that people assume that there was a plan and there's not one. We're figuring it out too, and we're waiting for information from the district office so we can set things in place. So Sam, you're just starting, and then it's kind of trickling down, and we're all just doing the best we can as quickly as we can. So this is just a crazy year for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're not keeping a secret plan. Just, you can let people know. There really isn't one. We're figuring it out.
I'm curious, April. Every time you unmute yourself, right? Then the phone goes. I understand that, you know, if there are enough parents, then if there are more parents who want their students back in school than teachers, then teachers will be assigned to lead those in-person classes. So I'm curious what the overall sentiment from our school community is about that. I don't know. I know you haven't had the survey from the union yet, but I'm curious what you're hearing, if that doesn't put you in too uncomfortable of a spot. I love the teachers I've had, and I want to see them supported in whatever way possible. So that's why I'm asking, not to out anybody.
Well, I would say that from an HR perspective, you know, the expectation is that people will do their job duties, unless there's a reason that they can't because of medical reasons or whatever, and HR is working through that. My impression at the beginning was that we're going to kind of work with folks to, you know, if there are slots available, we would, you know, if we need a remote teacher and we know that there's some medical reasons someone needs to be on remote, we'd kind of work with teachers that way. But I haven't heard any details. And like I said, the meeting I was in before this one, I was kind of confused about how they were speaking to that. So I don't know if that's going to be a decision that HR makes, if teachers will apply for a remote teaching position and somehow there's a selection process, or how we're doing it exactly. It hasn't been clearly outlined to me. That I may have missed something, but.
Well, and that I wonder too, because the way that I understood that was that digital learning was the default and in-person was sort of the secondary choice. And so it'll come by the numbers, right? So I'm just, yeah.
Well, my understanding is that we have to take care of our kids first. You know, we'll look at what our students our families are requesting and use our teacher FTE to address that, and assign, you know, have people do that. I don't know how it's going to be addressed as a district. But I have had a lot of communication from parents who said, I want my kid to stay with their current teacher. I think it would be really hard on them, and, you know, want to support the teacher in this. So we will see. The data we have right now doesn't show that. I guess we're going to get a link that'll indicate that, because people indicated their preference, but then there, I'm sure, are many who've also said, but if this is what the teacher's doing, I want my kid to stay with the teacher. So we haven't worked through all the teacher aspect of it. It's really complicated because this is you know, it's very emotional for some people and scary, and we're trying to, you know, meet the needs of teachers, but ultimately we have to take care of our kids. So we'll see what happens with that. I can't really speak to it.
I think that was one of the hard questions to answer on the survey, because it's so dependent on what the other option is. Of course, I love the teachers I have, but I don't know what I'm choosing, if I choose to stay online, or, you know, and so that was, I think, particularly the hardest part of the survey was, I can't answer this truthfully without a huge, well, it depends.
Mm-hmm.
That was my experience, and the experience that I heard from a number of other people. One question I had, April, was I believe it was the last email that you had sent that had mentioned that the planning may not have been the last email. There's been a lot, but it was relating to planning being done on a classroom level for ELP classes and then grade level for neighborhood classes. And I'm wondering if that means that it's either, I mean, I interpreted that to mean that, you know, if the majority of an ELP class wants to be in person, then that entire class would be teaching in person, whereas at the grade level, there may be a solely virtual class and a solely in-person class. Is that consistent? Did I understand that correctly, or?
So the issue with ELP magnet is that we are the only class in the program in the district that has Spanish dual immersion and ELP magnet. And so there's not, like, we can partner with the other magnet schools, but if a child gets into a class there, for example, for the remainder of the year, they're giving up the dual immersion piece of it. If you choose a dual immersion school to get you through, you're giving up your ELP. Or if you want your kid in a certain mode and we put them in a general ed class in our school and then they rejoin in the fall. I mean, there's all those things, but there's, and Elizabeth knows about this because she sent an email with a lot of questions, but we have to look at where the classes are located. That for 5th and 6th grade, for example, they're located in portable classrooms, which are, the size is a factor. And so we have to really look at safety, where kids are going to get quality instruction and consistent instruction, and kind of go case by case. But when we have a 2-teacher model, that's another factor for 5th and 6th grade that's huge. So I'm going to have the district kind of help me work through that. I've been in contact with Tiffany Hall about some options that we might be able to provide to get kids through the last 4 months of school. But that is the only program like that in the district. So we're going to have to figure that out, and it's really
with
complex.
The neighborhood.
And we also look at the quality of instruction that's being provided, like remotely. Is it adequate for kids to learn the Spanish piece of it? Is that the case in certain grade levels, but not so much like with our young kids who are just acquiring that language? All of those factors we're going to have to look at, and also consider what parents have, expressed they want. But in the end, it's just not a good situation, because there's people who are just not going to get what their preference would have been.
With the neighborhood classrooms, then would you then envision that you'd have probably some classrooms that were all virtual and some that were in person? In other words, do you see a scenario where teachers are teaching both modalities? Because what I've heard from other districts is friends and colleagues with students in other districts, is that has proved to be kind of not the best of both worlds, but it's dual modality is very difficult on teachers and students.
When teachers, there was a survey that went out, or it was a Microsoft Forms, just seeking some input, like in September. And teachers were asked, would you be willing to teach both? Would you like to be considered to be a remote teacher, and why? What are your skills that really lend itself to that? Most teachers said no, that it would be too hard to do both. However, as we've gotten closer to the planning, there have been some teacher or grade levels reach out and say, I want to try to figure out a way to keep my kids, all my kids. So if I have some that want remote, can I stream my instruction and make that work? And so, and we've said, well, that, we know that would be hard, but they're very, committed to their kids. And so as we start talking about it in grade levels, we'll see how that kind of shakes out and how the numbers shake out in the survey. So we hope it's just kind of perfect, like, oh, it'll just work, and so this class would just be remote and this one would be like, but that's not the way the data's looking right now. Bree and I have been peeking at it, and it's kind of like, oh, so we've chosen not to look for a while. Anyway, so it's going to be difficult to sort through all that stuff. But
understood.
I was wondering if you have received any feedback from other districts. I know that maintaining staffing levels, it has been an issue. Is there anything that perhaps you've learned from how other districts are doing that, and what takeaways you might put into place? I assume at some point we're going to have to deal with the fact that some teachers can't be in the classroom, and then what happens?
And that's been my biggest concern, and I did send some communication to the board and Larry about that, just that finding a substitute, so currently if we have people who need to be quarantined or be out or whatever, they're able to teach from home if they're not sick. So we can continue with that quality of instruction and everything. But when kids are here and their teachers have to be home, like how are we going to cover those classrooms? How are we going to get subs? I'll check in with Joe again about that. But my understanding is there really are not substitutes available. How are we going to be using paras in the class to cover in the classrooms? I think that's going to be our biggest challenge, frankly, is finding coverage for staff. And so I'm going to get as much information as I can, but I can't predict how that will go. We'll have plans, within our building, but we can't pull paraprofessionals from like our special ed classrooms and stuff like that. We'll have to, and we don't have a ton of people currently hired. We'll have to hire some folks in January, but that will be the biggest challenge there, I think. That's just my opinion, but just kind of forward thinking, that was what I kept thinking every time, was how are we going to deal with that?
I think that might be a really good thing for the board to spend some time addressing on January 5th.
Yeah, because it's going to be a huge challenge and it will impact the learning of students because the instruction won't be what it needs to be. If you can have someone cover a class, but then it's just supervision instead of really, kids learning. And that's been I've not been as worried about bringing the kids in and safety and stuff. We can address all of that. And there's good data that supports, procedures that work but in terms of dealing with that infrastructure of adults, that is going to be the challenge right there, I think.
Well, and it's not just sick teachers, it's teachers that may have a spouse that is sick or have had some sort of exposure and consistent with health department guidelines need to quarantine. So yeah,
and there's been questions about like, well, what if kids have to quarantine in the class and then what do they get remote instruction while they're out or whatever? And I've kind of posed it as well. It'd be like any other absence. We of course would provide work like kids do, but I don't know that we can provide remote learning as another option and things like that. So I don't know how that would work. And just if it's all the elementary schools in the district are bringing kids in, there's going to be a need for substitutes and people to cover in those classes. That's going to be a big impact, I think. I hope it's not true, but that's what my worry has been. Sorry about that. That's kind of a buzzkill, kind of.
I mean, it's the reality that I think at some point, somebody, and that somebody, I guess, is you, is going to have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've got about 10 minutes left of our time. Are there other questions for April or any of or comments?
I have another question, unless somebody else wants to go. Has there been any discussion about the teachers getting priority for the vaccines when they come out, and then also increased access to testing for students and teachers?
At the health department meeting that I was in with the superintendent and our board president, Melissa Ford, this was, I think, let me see if I can find the date. I think it was a few weeks ago now, but they said that as of that meeting, which I think was in the middle of November, teachers and other people that work in schools were in the third wave. And they were thinking that would mean late March or early April.
If you have any trouble figuring out which
And then as far as testing, again, the state has had interesting priorities in terms of, using 500,000 rapid tests on high school athletes about 200,000 that have been used for this program they're piloting called Test to Return, which you may have seen in the news media is not as successful as they thought it might be, just because they haven't been able to get the 80% participation rate at the schools that were otherwise closing. So I don't know. I know that Superintendent Madden is advocating, I'm guessing, for us to get those tests, but I don't know when or if either the state or the county health department would consider giving them to elementary school students or elementary school teachers and staff. Yeah, I wish I had better news about that. It's disappointing that that's been what the priorities have been from the state.
Well, thanks for the feedback.
This is Joey. I'm trying also to put on my video, but it's not going that well. Okay, here I am. This is like, once again, like a series of impossible choices, right? Like full day school has some advantages for the school and some advantages for some families, or maybe online learning, but is not effective for other families, or is like really problematic for families with working schedules, et cetera. And thinking about supporting teachers and teachers trying to do like online classes or in-person classes or both, which I'm amazed that we have these teachers to who are trying to conceive of a way to make that work. And I know that all of that is really redundant, but I just want to say thank you so much to April and all of the teachers, because it is, and to our school board representatives for tackling this. I understand that you have to, but thanks anyway, because this has been, as I've heard this conversation, to understand the kind of thought that has gone into this is really reassuring to me as a parent, knowing that I knew it was going on anyway, but I appreciate hearing it and understanding what your thinking is and what your concerns are, because in truth, this really helps me. I'm one of the half who has not filled out the survey yet, and this will help inform that decision, I think, in a really meaningful way. So thank you very much to your whole team.
Thank you, Joey. And our teachers are, they care about the kids. And so it's been nice in that, SIC meeting, and they have worries and fears and all that, but they stayed focused on our students, and we're just working through this the best we can. But I appreciate how professional our teachers are and what they do for our kids. It's amazing.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, Joey, thank you for saying that. She is our neighbor just across the street, and so, when I ran for this position, I ran, putting teachers and students ahead of every challenges we may face. Because the reality is this school would not be there if it was not for students and if it was not for teachers. I mean, we can't operate a vehicle, without an engine, and the teachers and students are the engine of that vehicle. So if I were to give just a quick message of hope, these are challenging times, no doubt about that. But one thing I know is we all have grown and we all have learned, and our kids have something to tell to their grandkids. So their stories are not going to be that boring for sure. So hang in there. That's one thing that amazed me about this country is we hit, some rough dips, but we come up strong and actually more united. And one thing also I want to leave everyone with here is, you know, let's all think as we and not as I, because, you know, I always say one hand cannot clap, it needs the other hand. And we all need each other here, you know. Let's vent on each other, and I'm here as well to, you know, if you need to vent, please go at it, call me, you know, I'll be here to listen. So, but I'm very, very humbled and very, very proud of each one of you here and those who are not here. You've been doing an amazing job, and I'm so proud of everyone.
Well, thank you to our board members for being here to answer questions. And I think it really helps parents and teachers feel supported, like they're being heard and their inputs being considered. And so thank you for attending the meetings and sharing information with us. Samuel and Mohammed.
Thank you all. And one thing I wanted to mention was that I got an email today from Michelle Riggs, who's the administrator over ELP, and depending on how engaged you are with the ELP steering committee, you may or may not know that they've been talking about renaming the NELP and MELP programs to make it clearer what they are and how they're different and similar to each other. So they have a survey for ELP parents, teachers, administrators, which I'll put in the chat, which you might look at. And if you have questions about the discussion, you can call me or email me, or you could also reach out to Ann Barnes-Hargis, who's the chair of the steering committee.
I think you should have, if you are listed as an SCC member, you should have received that survey directly from Michelle.
Oh, good. Okay.
All of us. So, but I did wonder if anybody had questions about it, because it isn't, if you're not familiar with the programs, the names are already confusing, which is why they're considering changing them, I think. So.
And I'm on the advisory committee too, so if anyone has questions, you know, for me too, I was at those meetings also.
And I don't know if it's going to ELP parents or not. Do you know, April or Samuel? Liz asked in the chat.
Oh no, it didn't say in the email that I got. Do you know that, April?
I don't, but it seems to me that it would be.
Right.
So, because
yeah, I haven't received it. But is this only?
I don't believe that I've received it either.
Is it elementary or all grade levels? Is it junior high too? In high school?
Yep.
Yeah.
So magnet and neighborhood programs at all the different levels. So.
Sorry, it just went to administrators, magnet and neighborhood ELP teachers, SCC chairs, middle school counselors, and ELP advisory council members. So it's not a broad survey. It was sort of narrow in that way. I guess, April, maybe that's a good question to ask. I'm happy to respond back to Michelle if you think that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome if you could just say, I brought it up at our community council, and the parents in the ELP program wondered why they weren't surveyed.
Can I still fill it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and fill it out, and I put it in the chat, like I said. So.
Right, I linked to it. I saw it. I want to fill it out.
Yeah, fill it out.
There you go.
They did another one that got almost no.
Yeah.
I think it got like 10 responses. So I think if this one it says closes on the 18th. So it'd be good if they got some feedback, because I think it's a good idea, and I think it will sort of move us both towards communicating more clearly and thinking about the equity issues that we need to be thinking about. And you know, as we go into this time where I think we're gonna have to think about the fact that all of our ELP programs are, you know, right here in what will soon be Mohammed's precinct, right next to each other. So
that's, I mean, I guess that's my question. Is this a larger discussion than a name change? Because
Well, I think that there are threads, right, that have come and gone. And I mean, I've only been around for 1.5 years, but I know from when my mom was around, which was for 14 years, that that would kind of come up and down, like to the surface of people's attention. It hasn't changed in all that time, so it's obviously not gathered momentum. But I feel like, to be frank, you know, the district at large is going to have to, and the board is going to have to do some really hard thinking about, you know, just, we've got a lot of schools, and luckily Emerson is not one of them, but we've got a lot of schools that are under enrolled. And as we come out of COVID, it'll be interesting to see which schools recover and which schools, you know, maybe need to be consolidated or closed. And that's not a fun thing to talk about, but I think it's gotten to a point where the board will have to talk about it. And it would be good to think about issues like this while we're thinking about that, you know, because in some sense, these moments of transition present an opportunity, you know, maybe to do things in a different or more equitable or more thoughtful way.
So we're just at time. Any last words, comments, or questions?
I did have one question relative to the parent survey. Is there an estimate as to when, at least at a school level data, I assume it'll be presented at the next board meeting district-wide, but will we be able to see school level data earlier than the next board, or earlier than January 5th, I believe?
Yeah, I don't know if I guess we're supposed to share that out, but the date was the 11th is when we were hoping to get most of the responses in, and then we're going to pester people to, the ones who haven't responded, to provide it. But so I don't know about that. Is that going to be presented at the board meeting also, guys? Do you know?
I would assume so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we did ask for that. At least a few of us individually asked for it. So I would think so.
I think what's ever presented at the board level, though, will be more district or kind of elementary. I mean, it may be school specific, but I think it probably is going to be kind of broader stroke data.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would love to see what our Emerson community feels specifically, whether that's, you know, after the board reviews all of the data or not. I still think it'd be relevant for this board to understand what our school community is saying. So I think that'd be worthwhile if that's possible.
Clayton presented, they were able to extract just the Clayton parent responses. So I assume you could do the same, and maybe it's just a matter of requesting it from the district. And if there's enough responses for the questions to, you know, be representative or not. But
and I can't remember, we are meeting the week after we get back from winter break, is that correct? On the 13th or something?
Yeah, let me confirm that, but yes, I think it's the 13th.
Okay. And hopefully we will have moved along. We'll have a pretty much a plan, put together by then. So be 2 weeks before the little kids come back. And just some information, for the Samuel and Mohammed, some parents that reached out. There was a question about using metrics to make some decisions. So I know that that's out there in the community. Like, would they ever consider there has to be, a certain % positive or whatever? And I couldn't answer that. So I did suggest that they reach out to the board members and ask those questions. So feeling like those were kind of necessary to ensure safety of kids, or make it more safe than, the way things are going crazy right now.
Yeah, I've heard that too from a lot of folks.
So the But thank you for your input and all this information so that our SIC can use it as we work through this process. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you for all of the information. We have not filled out the survey. It's really helpful to be able to get some answers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
I'll call the meeting. Have a great evening. Happy holidays.
All right.
Bye.
You all.
Thank you.